That's right. It's cleared to play. We'll take you inside the tent and get you updated on the latest injuries in the Bay. Proud to partner with UCSF Health on this segment and bring in Associate Professor of Orthopedic Surgery, Dr. Nirav Pandya. Good, Doc. Great to have you. Bob Myers does not GM tonight. Sorry, Doc. That's the end of that.
And I don't have a Bob Myers jersey either, so I can't. I don't know what to say.
Oh man, unbelievable. Although very expected in some ways as well. Hey, what'd you think of this Jimmy Garoppolo situation where the contract is basically now all non-guaranteed and Jimmy had to sign his life away in order to even – what's going on with his foot, Doc? What's happening here?
Yeah, I think it definitely is a little bizarre, given the fact that, Jimmy was, in a cast, started, walking, and basically was potentially available if the 49ers made the Super Bowl. And next thing you know, the Raiders examine him and say you need surgery. Now, if you look at it from a 10,000-foot view, those bones that were reported to be broken in Jimmy, those are the ones that involve kind of the area where you worry about a Lisfranc injury. So potentially his bones may have healed, but then he gets to the point where he's doing more football activity and his foot is kind of having some soreness. It's not feeling well. They get an MRI and they're like, look, your bones are healed, but this ligament is still an issue. So now we need to go ahead and potentially get this ligament repaired if that's what the injury is. The other possibility is maybe his bones did not completely heal and he got surgery for that. So it's kind of a bizarre in the sense that he kind of progressed and there wasn't any signs of that happening when he was with the 49ers, but not unheard of for this to happen. I think Jimmy is kind of like the rest of us. Unlike professional athletes who jump right to surgery, just like with the shoulder, he may just be like, look, let me see if I can get this to heal on conservatively, and if it doesn't work, then I'll get surgery down the road. It's just a little bit different for professional athletes. Most of them would err on the side of, let me get this fixed so I can get back on the field and perform out there. So definitely a little bit of a bizarre situation.
And based on the nature of the injury, what was the likelihood of it actually getting better without surgery versus perhaps him needing surgery right from the get-go and therefore missing a chance to play in a potential Super Bowl?
Yeah, it probably was one of these gray zone type injuries because when you have, if this was a Lisfranc injury, obviously none of us know for sure. But typically, if it just involves the ligament and the bones look okay, then typically you say, look, this thing needs surgery because soft tissue is not going to heal. You get in this gray zone where the bones may be fractured and the ligament kind of looks okay. So they were saying, look, it's probably just bony. Let's give it a shot and go for it. And if it doesn't work or you have symptoms, let's go ahead and get it fixed down the road. So I think it probably was in this gray zone, and they saw that, look, this just isn't working out, and we're concerned about your long-term ability to play for the Raiders as opposed to potentially the short-term risk that the 49ers had. So a lot of it's just kind of risk-benefit, and Jimmy felt that maybe he could get out there and play in the Super Bowl, and now the Raiders are like, look, we don't know if you're going to be ready for a full season. Get this fixed.
Doc, a couple of thoughts from you with regard to the Brock Purdy situation in that he's starting his throwing program this week. In your opinion, that means what in terms of timing, and what are we looking for once that throwing program starts?
Yeah, so I think this is exactly right on schedule, 3 months after surgery. So that's a very positive sign that mobility, kind of strength, all those things have lined up for him to start throwing. Now, these first couple of weeks of throwing are not typically what we'd assume. He's not going to be out there at training camp throwing 40, 50-yard passes. It's, initially start out with throwing, a football that's not necessarily the same weight as normal football, a little bit lighter. Then you're throwing short distances and slowly ramping up. So I think the next couple of weeks are going to be like, let's really test this ligament. Let's see how your velocity looks, how your mechanics look. I would assume that probably in a couple of weeks you'll see him throwing more like you'd expect at training camp. But I think there's obviously going to be a lot of eyes on 49ers fans breaking down videos of Brock throwing. What does he look like? Or his mechanics difference? I really think you can't make a determination of how his arm really looks and what his throwing motion really looks like until 6 to 8 weeks from now. But the fact that he's throwing, very positive. Seems like things are on track for him to be ready at whatever point the 49ers want him to, whether that be 6 months or 7 months after the surgery.
Hopefully sooner rather than later. One more, Doc, and it's about last night, and it's Jason Tatum and the ankle. You saw the game, you saw the injury. How much do you think that truly hampered him throughout the ball game?
I think it probably hampered him quite a bit. I mean, the tough thing with dealing with ankle injuries during the game is that there's very little you can do besides taping it, potentially icing it, but then you also want to get mobility. I think it's a lot easier to deal with these injuries the day afterwards where you can get swelling down, you can do all the treatment. But in-game, obviously if you're putting ice on it, then it's going to make you stiff. If you put heat on it, it's going to cause more swelling to occur. Taping can sometimes be, impactful in terms of giving stability, but that joint itself just gets so irritated and painful. it's very, very difficult. So the fact that he tried to play, obviously, give him credit for that, but he clearly was limited. But going back from an in-game ankle injury like that could be very, very difficult, and it clearly impacted his play.
Doc, great stuff. And I know we'll be following along, obviously, with the Purdy story, and now the Garoppolo one as well, which is never, ever, ever going to be over.
Absolutely. You have a good one, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Doc. There he goes. Doc Pandya. The proceeding was sponsored by UCSF Health.